This is the video for Lesson 1 from the Grade 7 Module 4 book. So this is found on page 1, but before we get into it, we're actually going to skip down to example 1, then we'll come back to this opening exercise. So we are starting a new topic. This topic is called percent. Percent is something you may have heard before, but we're going to dive into it, make sure you have a good understanding of what it is, what it means, and what we can do with it. So in example one found on page 2, we are going to be taking percent and writing that value as a fraction and as a decimal. So before we get into actually doing that though, we should understand what the word percent means. It says use the definition of the word percent. So that definition is that a percent is a part out of 100. I'm going to underline that because that is important. Percent always has to do with the whole of 100. So what does that mean? That means in our fraction bar, for every single fraction here, we can start off like this. We can put a fraction and we could put the number 100 underneath it because that's what the definition of percent means. It's the numerator is the part, so the number is the part out of 100. So for every single fraction box, I want you to put a fraction bar with a 100 underneath it, saving yourself some space so we can reduce if possible. So there we go. We have our fraction bars with 100 in the denominator. So we're set up for percent. Now for the numerator, when we have a number with the percent sign behind it, that means that the number is the numerator when it's in fraction form. So if you didn't know, there are 3 different ways to write percent. You can write it with a percent symbol, you can write the value of the percent as a fraction, and then you can write the value of that percent as a decimal. Just got to make sure you're following the rules for each. So for this one, we'll put 37.5 as the numerator. So we have 37.5 over 100. There we go. Here, 100% is 100 out of 100. 110% is 110 over 100. 1% is 1 over 100. And half a percent is half over 100. Sorry, I know that might be a little small on your screen. So whatever number is in front of the percent sign, it goes on top when it's written as a fraction. But with fractions, we know that sometimes we can reduce those. So we want to take each of these and we want to type in our calculators to see if they reduce. So 37.5 ABC 100. I will do it on my computer calculator that I got here. 37.5. I don't have an ABC button. Mine automatically makes it a fraction. You'll use your ABC button. So it gives me a decimal at first. We'll get to that in a second. When I convert it to a fraction though, so once you guys use the ABC button on your calculator, you'll see how that gives you 3/8. So 3/8 is my simplified form of 37.5% when I write it as a fraction. We can keep going. We can do 100. Well, 100, ABC 100, I don't even need to do the fraction for that. I know that that will reduce to 1. So 100% when I write it as a fraction is actually just 1. 110% when I write that as a fraction, we will get 11 over 10. You also might get a mixed number. You might have gotten 1 and 1/10. That's fine also. Just remember how to use your calculator, convert between mixed numbers and improper fractions. All right, 1 over 100. That is as simple as it gets. That does not reduce, so we'll leave that as that. And then we have 1/2 over 100. That in your calculator might get a little tricky. So what I would do is I would put parentheses 1 and maybe use the division symbol, 1 divide by 2 in parentheses, then ABC over 100. And you will get 1 over 200. All right, so there we go. We just covered how to turn each of these percents into the fraction form. Each of these that I box here have the same value as what it was in percent form. It's just written in a different way. And you're going to have to be able to change them back and forth and recognize when something is in percent form versus when something's in fraction form. All right, going on. So for decimals, decimals is easy. Again, we're going to keep the same value. We're just going to write it with a decimal instead of a fraction. So what you could do is you could do 3 divided by 8. I'll show you right here, 3 divided by 8. If you use the division symbol on your calculator, it'll automatically do it for you, like it does here for me. So that's 0.375 as a decimal. So important to remember, 37.5% is the same as 0.375. This does not have the does not have the percent sign behind it. 100%. That as a decimal is 1.0. Kind of the same as a fraction, except we know that there's an invisible decimal point with invisible zeros going on forever behind it. 110%. That is 1.1. I'm going to rewrite that a little better. There we go. 1%. 0.01. And then half of a percent is 0.005. Okay. Sliding down to example 2, kind of going a little further with that, except now we're not just starting with percents all the time. They give us different forms of it. So this first row here, they give us the percent, so that's good. We have to find out what this 350% is as a fraction and a decimal. I'm going to always do the fraction form first because that kind of sets everything up and I think it's the easiest. I know that a fraction, when I turn a percent into a fraction, it's whatever the percent is over 100. 100 is always the denominator. Then I can go ahead and I can go to my calculator, do my division. 350 divided by 10, and that will give me 3.5. I don't want 3.5 though, because we want it as a fraction, so it'll be 7 over 2. In your calculator, just use that ABC button, then convert it to an improper fraction. So 7 over 2 is 350%. Now, as a decimal, you might have saw what that is in my calculator. You can just type in 350 divided by 100, or you could do 7 divided by 2. Either way, you will get 3.5. So there we go. Now we have that. That was perhaps the easiest one because we were used to doing that from example 1. Example 2 is a little different. So example 2, they give us a decimal first, and we have to figure out what this is as a fraction and as a percent. The first thing we'll do is find out what this is as a fraction. So if I write this as a fraction, we're obviously going to need a fraction bar. Now, I know that I said percent is over 100, but since they don't give us a percent, we have to go with the decimal form. We have to figure out what number should go in the denominator. The way you figure out what number should go in the denominator is that you are going to take the place value of the last decimal number. So we look here, we see how this is a 5. 5 is the third number after the decimal. So therefore, 5 is in the 1,000ths place. So I put this chart right here. Maybe you want to pause the video right now and take a second to sketch it in somewhere on your notebook if you don't have these place values memorized. Here's the decimal. We can see that the first number after the decimal is the tenths, second number is called the hundredths, and the third number, like I said, is the thousandths. So that means that the number that goes underneath our fraction bar when we're going from a decimal is 1,000. And we're just going to put this number up on top, meaning the number after the decimal, not the entire number, just the number after the decimal. So you could write it, if you want to be safe, you could put 0.25, or you could recognize, oh, that's actually just 25. Then we can go from there. So now we just have to reduce it. So 25 over 1,000, go ahead, pull up your calculator, use that ABC button, and you'll see how it gives you 1 over 40. So there we go, we have our fraction there. Now, as a percent, that gets a little tricky. So how do we write this in a percent form? To go from a decimal to a percent, there's a trick you can do with the decimal itself. You know that a percent needs to have a percent sign. To turn a decimal into a percent, you take the decimal and you actually move it twice to the right. So now our percent is 2.5%. And you can always double check that. Go to your calculator. 2.5%. 2.5 divided by 100, and it should give me the decimal that I started with, and it does. We see 0.25, or 0.025, I should say. So now you have a little trick to turn decimals into percents the quick and easy way. All right, now we have a fraction. So 1 over 8. 1 over 8 as a decimal. Simple enough, we know how to do that. 1 divided by 8 gives us 0.125. So I'll write that in, 0.125. We're going to use that same trick we just learned with moving the decimal. We'll put our percent sign, because we don't want to move the decimal without putting a percent sign. That changes the whole value, and we're not changing values. We're just writing it in different forms. Here's my decimal. I'll move it twice to the right. So now, as a percent, it's 12.5%. All right, so example 2 is done. We're going to skip up to the opening exercise now to match the percents with the correct sentence clues. So in this one, so in these exercises, we are really exploring how well we know fractions. So let's get started. 25%. 25%, we know that we can turn that into a fraction and a decimal. Let's go ahead and do that. So 25% is equal to 25 over 100, which is also equal to 1 over 4. So that helps us. We could turn into a decimal also, but let's see if that written as a fraction helps us come up with something. So this first choice, I am half of a half. Half of a half, well, we could explore really what that looks like. It also gives us another example, 5 cubic inches of water filled in a 20 cubic inch bottle. I actually like using that one better because they give us a part out of a whole. The part is the 5 inches of water, so that goes on top, 5 cubic inches of water. And the whole is the entire capacity of the bottle, which is 20. So you could just go to your calculator, you could do 5 ABC 20, and you'll find that that equals 1 over 4. So first one's kind of easy. 25% equals 1/4. 5 over 20 also equals 1/4. So we would say that 25% matches with this first statement. All right, let's look at the second statement. 50%, or the second percentage, I should say. 50% is equal to 50 over 100, and that's equal to 1 over 2. So let's look for something that matches up with that. Here we go. It says, I am less than 1 over 100. Well, I actually know that 1 over 2, it's a lot more valuable to have, well, no, I won't go off with that. But 1 over 2, is that less than 1 over 100? It is not. 1 over 2 is greater than 1 over 100. If you're not good with fractions like that, of course, check out the second statement. Does it match this fraction? 25 out of 5,000, that'd be 25 over 5,000, which reduces to 1/40th. So that does not work. 1/2 is not 1/40th. We have to keep going. I am the chance of birthing a boy or a girl. Okay, boy or girl. Two choices you have being when you're born, either being a boy or being a girl. Another example here, flip a coin and it'll land on heads or tails. So really what this fraction is giving us is there are two possible outcomes. So 2 is the denominator. One of them is going to happen. You're either going to get a heads or you're going to get a tails. So 1. And look at that. We have a match. 50% is equal to 1 over 2. That matches up with this statement then. Okay, so we could keep going like that. Okay, 30%. 30% is 30 over 100. 30 over 100 reduces to 3 over 10. So, which one of these matches up with 3 over 10? Well, I know it's not this one. This one is 1 over 40. Can't be this one. We already picked it. I am less than half, but more than 1/4. 3 over 10 is less than half, and it is more than 1/4. So let's check out this fraction. 15 out of 50 play drums in a band. 15 is the numerator, 50 is the denominator. 15 over 50 reduces to 3 over 10. So there we go, we have another match. 3 over 10, and then this one was equal to 3 over 10. So 30 matches with this statement. All right, so we kind of get the idea of what's going on. I will fill in the rest of our fractions here. So let's see, 1 is equal to 1 over 100. That won't reduce. 10 would be equal to 10 over 100, which reduces to 1/10. 100% reduces to 1, just the number 1. 300% reduces to 3. And then that 0.5% we talked about, that reduces to 1 over 200. So at this point, I want you to go ahead. I want you to figure out what does 1 over 100 match up with. 1 over 100 will match up with the I am a tenth of a tenth. 1 penny is this part of $1. And again, 1 penny is 1 out of 100 to make a full dollar. All right, 1/10. 1/10 is equal to the last statement there. I am less than a fourth, but more than a hundredth. $11 out of $110 earned is saved in the bank. That matches up with that 1/10 fraction. All right, 100%. 100% matches up with that statement right there. I am equal to 1. Well, that was pretty easy because we found out it is equal to 1. 100 divided by 100 is equal to 1. All right, 300%. 300% matches up with that statement right there. I am more than 1. Instead of the $1,200 expected to be raised, $3,600 was collected for the school's fundraiser. That would be 300% of what they expected, because the 3,600 would be the numerator in that case. All right, and the last one, 0.5% matches up with 1/200th. Hopefully it caught me when I made that simple mistake earlier.